former Prime Minister Boris Johnson has written in today's Mail on Sunday, well, they're serialising his new book, he's written about the final meeting he had with the late Queen.
In the extracts published from his memoir, he claims he'd known for more than a year that she had a form of bone cancer.
Yeah, that came as a bit of a surprise to both of us, actually, although it has been pointed out to us by many of our viewers this morning, thank you very much, that actually it was being talked about that she had some form of bone cancer. Then he also says in his memoir, he sort of shares the advice he received from the late Queen, who said there's no point in bitterness over the events that led to his departure.
It's a very good point.
Yeah.
She was a wise woman.
She was, wasn't she? Do you think she started out wise? Has she always been wise?
No. I think it just comes with age, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I think that's what you miss to a certain extent, isn't it? Joining us live from Devon is former BBC Royal correspondent Jennie Bond. Morning, Jennie.
Good morning.
I bet you had a lovely sunrise in Devon today, did you? We've had wonderful sunrises from all over.
No, it's cloudy. The sea is really, really rough out there. It's quite dramatic, actually.
Oh, wow, OK. Not what I expected. Well, talking of, the climate at the moment, what do you think of Boris Johnson and what he's writing in his memoirs about the Queen? Should he be writing about those private audiences he had?
I think he's been reasonably discreet. Bits and pieces of audiences by prime ministers and with the Queen have come out in the past. I remember Tony Blair revealing that there were only two people he could really tell everything to. One was the wife and the other was the Queen. But he has confirmed some suggestions that we had been hearing about, as you say, the bone cancer. That had been a rumour that had been going around. Officially, the Queen was said to have died simply of old age, but I think it puts a perspective on those last days and months of her life and the pain that we knew she was in, her difficulty with walking, and the monumental effort she must have made to appear on the balcony at the Platinum Jubilee celebrations. It was touch and go until the very end whether she'd do that. Obviously those last few days and months were very, very difficult for her. But he paints a portrait, as you've suggested, of the most wise woman, built on years and years of experience, global experience. And she imparted some of that wisdom to her prime ministers. And Boris Johnson clearly appreciated his meetings with the Queen as much as I've heard other prime ministers have in the past.
Oh, it's interesting then. So in effect, on the bone cancer issue, as you say, it was rumoured. But you're saying it hasn't. This is the first time we've actually had it confirmed. And if that's the case, is that really his place to do that?
No, it's not really his place. And I don't think the palace will be overjoyed that he's put that in the book, because clearly, they didn't announce it. So one must presume that the Queen wanted that kept private. But I have heard it before. So it has been somewhat in the public domain. But no, I don't think they'll be well pleased. I don't think they'll mind the rest of it, though, because the portrait is very sympathetic indeed of our late Queen.
He says that there were two bits of advice that she literally gave him. One was not to be bitter, because bitterness doesn't help anything. And the other is about magpies. And it just shows the lighter side. He said that he still freaks out when he sees one single magpie because of this belief that that's bad luck. And she said, yes. But she said, if you see a single magpie, you just say, "Good morning, Mr. Magpie. Today is," and then you give him the date, whatever the date is, and that sorts it out. So she clearly had this sort of light touch as well.
Oh, she did, I think, yes. And she was quite good on one-liners. There's another one that Boris Johnson mentions about President Macron and his wife, because Macron apparently got confused as to whether Northern Ireland was indeed a separate country or part of the UK, and he seemed to think it was a separate country. And the Queen apparently remarked that there was an age difference, an obvious age difference between Macron and his wife. And Boris Johnson said, "Oh, yes, he married his teacher." And she said, "Well, she didn't teach him about history very well, did she?" And that's the kind of humour she had.
Yeah, you hear again and again little... of course, history was her thing, wasn't it? But she really did know her stuff about history. She knew names and dates, and she could trip you up if you got it wrong.
She just didn't know the theory. She had been there. She had done it. She had met them. She had met all these world leaders. And Johnson says in his book, if you couldn't quite remember, I know the full president of Kenya or something. Oh, you mean Kenyatta? Yes, of course, because she had met them many times around the world in this incredibly long reign. So I mean, I've heard time and again, and people like me have spouted on for years about this wise head on such experienced shoulders, and then to hear someone like Boris Johnson say, yes, that is exactly what she gave to me. She gave me wisdom and kindness and thoughtfulness, and she would just listen sympathetically with understanding, real understanding of the situation, and then give us the tiniest little nudge of advice. And I think that was what she was so good at.
I mean, we were saying earlier that we miss her. Of course, I think we all still miss her. But we saw the King and the Queen out yesterday in Scotland. And, of course, he, too, fighting cancer. And you start to understand how wearing that must be when you've got to do official royal duties. But he looked well and said he was well. And Camilla's there beside him. They're making a very good job of it, aren't they?
They are making a good job, and you were saying, how you miss her and miss her wisdom and the long reign that she had and how much experience she'd had. But you have to think, Charles is 75, he's not a young man by any means, and he's been on the world scene for decades as well, and he's met most of these people. So, I think his shoulders quite broad and his mind is quite attuned to everything that's going on around the world. Yeah, he is making a great job of it. I just hope he can continue to do so, get through this treatment. He's off to Australia in about 3 weeks' time with Camilla. That's going to be quite testing, I should think. But he's back on the world scene, so that's good news.
It is good news, and it's great to see you again, Jenny. Thanks very much indeed. I hope the weather's not too stormy for you over the next few days. Thank you.
I was just looking at Bonnie King Charlie, as the Sun has it.
Yeah.
Well, him and Camilla yesterday. She's got a nice tartan edge to her coat.
Yes, absolutely.
But he does look very well.
Yes, he does. Thank goodness.
He does look very well. And lots of well-wishers. Yvonne Macmillan from East Renfrewshire gave him a hug.
Oh, he's had quite a few hugs recently, actually, hasn't he? From the
he
New
was
Zealand
feeling
ladies
better,
football team. They all gave him a hug.
If I could give him a hug, and which he must have said yes. I quite like the fact that with the New Zealand lot, that was just... He looked so pleased.
He was thrilled.
That I just thought it was... It's not the sort of thing he would normally do, is it? But I like the fact he's a bit more approachable.
Yes,
that's the monarchy developing.
He's the next generation, isn't he?
But he does look well there.
Yeah.
Good. I'm pleased to see it. I'm pleased to see it.
Life goes on, as the Queen pointed out.
I like him immensely.
I do.
I don't know why.
Because it's a very difficult job.
Yes.
I mean, following his mother, but also it's a very difficult job, full stop, especially when you inherit that role when most people have already retired. Frankly. And I think the same for her, for Camilla to suddenly take on this massive job of being Queen. And they seem to be doing very well. And they're being very stoic. And isn't that what we need?
Well, it is certainly what we need.